Good morning, children. Now let's start with new chapter number 7, A Visit to a Cambridge. This story is about meeting of two extraordinary persons. And both of them are disabled people. Disabled means one person who is not able to use his body part properly due to any disease. Stephen Hawking is one of the greatest scientists of the olden times and he suffers from paralysis. Due to paralysis, he has to use wheelchair and he is able to speak by only punching buttons on a computer which speaks from him in a machine like voice. Now Faraday's Kanga is our author and he is writer and journalist also. He lives and works in Mumbai. Kanga is born with brittle bones. Brittle means hard, but it can break easily. Just like Hawking, Kanga also moves on the wheelchair. Now we will see how the two great men exchange their thoughts. They will explain us how does it feels when they are living a life on a wheelchair and how the normal people just like us react to the disabled people. So let's start with the chapter. And the writer says Cambridge was my metaphor for England. Metaphor means symbol because he met Stephen Hawking there. Now the Kanga says when he was walking to the Cambridge, Cambridge is a city of the England. With his guide mentioned him about Stephen Hawking by saying that he was a poor man. Poor not in terms of money because he was disabled person. Though he was successor like Isaac Newton. He has position of Isaac Newton in the university. And he says that I completely forgot the most brilliant man was completely paralyzed. And he was astrophysicist. Astrophysicist means a person who deals with stars and planets. And he says he was the author of Brief History of Time means most popular author and one of the biggest best sellers for his books. All these informations guide gives to the author. Then after completing the walking tour on his wheelchair, author rushed to the phone booth and he teared the cord. Teared means to pull forcefully and cord means the string of the telephone so that it could reach outside because he was paralyzed and he was not able to walk. And finally he called Stephen Hawking's house. Stephen Hawking's assistant received the call and he explained all the things that he had came from India on the wheelchair, all these things, and finally he get appointment for half an hour. And he says I felt weak by growing up disabled because of people asking me to brave. Then he says as if I have current account on which I am lazy to draw a check means he compares people's thought with this. And he says by watching someone like him makes him very strong. And he was thinking about the next afternoon when they both were going to meet. He thinks that how Stephen Hawking will behave, he was feeling brave or not. He said this with his disembodied computer voice. embodied means a body which is not in a complete order. We can say it bodiless also. And he says to live creatively with having this integrated means lose strength of his body was a choice. But I kept quiet because I felt guilty means bad for anyone. Every time I spoke to him and forced him to respond. Who says this? Author. He was tapping at little switch in his hands, trying to find words on the computer with his long pale fingers. Pale means yellow, light yellow in color. He describes the way in which Stephen Hawking was answering to his questions. Look into the picture. A person, a man sitting on the left side with red indication is having computer with him, and in his hands he is having switch. And the author says he was very tired by finding different words to speak out, though his mind was very vibrant and active. And he says that generally normal people thinks that disabled people are extremely unhappy. Chronically means extremely unhappy. And he expressed his thought that he don't think so. After 3 minutes, Stephen Hawking responded him. He said he find it amusing. Amusing means funny. When people patronized me. Patronized means daya khana. Then author asked me, do you find annoying? Annoying means irritating. When someone like me comes and disturbs you in your work. And the answer flashed on the computer screen. The answer is yes. And he smiled. And the author says, I knew without being sentimental. Sentimental means without being sad, that too much questioning or disturbance in the work irritates the person. The author feels like he is looking at the most beautiful men in the world. And the author says the first glimpse of Stephen Hawking, glimpse means first look, a quick look of Stephen Hawking was very shocking, just like a photograph. As he was watching any three-dimensional photograph. Three-dimensional means a picture having proper length, breadth and depth. Now the author describes the Stephen Hawking about his look. His head was twisted at the one side as we can see in the picture, and the torso shrunk inside the pale blue yellow shirt. Torso means the upper part of the body and shrunk means to shrink, to get inside. And his eyes are speaking something urgent and huge. But we cannot say, we cannot define what his eyes want to tell us. But he says you are shaken. Shaken means you will be in shock because you can see something you had never thought could be seen. He feels like he was looking to any lantern whose walls are worn. Worn means kharab ho jana, but the inner light is still. With this example, he describes Stephen Hawking that his body is not working properly, but the incandescence means inner glow is still. And he says his body was almost irrelevant. Irrelevant means not good. Now he shares his thoughts that he has no belief in eternal souls. Eternal souls means Atma. But he says in the case of Stephen Hawking, he feels something different, like an accessory. Accessory means which is not very essential, but something extra decorative is there. And he asked one question to the Stephen Hawking. What do you think is the best thing about being disabled? And Stephen Hawking replied, no, I don't think there is anything good to be disabled. Then again he says, do you discover kindness is there in the world? Stephen Hawking replied, yes, but there is one disadvantage in my wheelchair, that is my voice synthesizer, means voice converter. As we have studied that the Stephen Hawking replies through the machine language by using buttons on the computer. So he cannot justify, so he cannot show his feelings with the help of words. And he says, I could not tell you how enthusiastically means how intensely I agree with you. And he says, I shift myself in my chair to watch the time. I want to count every 30 minutes in which I can do something good. It gives me relief and exhilaration. Exhilaration means a new excitement in my body. And he says, no matter that I would never walk or stand. Author asked Stephen Hawking that he is inspiration for him and for other people also. So this thought helped him. Stephen Hawking replied, no. Then the author says, how foolish I am to ask you this when our body is in claustrophobic. Claustrophobic means very small and suffocating place and growing narrow day by day. In this condition, no matter what outsiders say, or they are ready to see you breathing still. Then author asked him, is any advice to give disabled people to make them feel better? Stephen Hawking replies, they should concentrate on what they are good. Olympics are the waste for the disabled people. On this, author agrees with Stephen Hawking and says, I know what do you mean. Then author shares his experience with Stephen Hawking. I remember the years I had spent many years trying to play Spanish guitar, which was considerably larger than me. Then I had gleefully means very happily, unstringed means tod dena, it one night. Then author says half an hour is up. Up means over. And I think I have annoyed you. Annoyed means irritated. And then he says thank you to Stephen Hawking. Then Stephen Hawking told him to wait and he waited. Stephen Hawking offered him a cup of tea and he said, I will show you my garden. After taking tea, now they are going to visit garden. The author says Stephen Hawking's garden was as big as park and he covered every inch by rumbling. Rumbling means walking with the help of the motorized wheelchair. And he says, I dodged to keep out of the way, means to keep away from. Then he describes their visit in the garden. He says we couldn't talk very much because the sun made him silent. and the letters on the computer screen were disappearing in the glare. Glare means glow, shine. After an hour, they are ready to leave now. Author says, what to do? I don't know. I could not kiss him or cry. Then he says, I touched his shoulder and then I wheeled out, means ready to go. Then the author says, I looked back, the Stephen Hawking was waving himself, but he is not able to. The author says the Stephen Hawking was an embodiment of the brave for him. Embodiment means a symbol, a model for him on which he had believed from so many years. And lastly, the author says, my journey is over for now. Here, our chapter gets complete, and I hope you understood and had taken moral from this chapter. Though they are disabled, they are trying for better life. So we can also try and get more better life by doing hard work. Now I will summarize the chapter in very short. This chapter surrounds the concept of living a better life. The author speaks how one must keep their focus on the good and their talent irrespective of the disabilities that one should have. I hope you will also try for the better life by doing hard work in your life. So, we will meet in our next video with next chapter. Thank you.